All right, so I'm going to attempt to make a little display that shows what gear I'm in. So I've taken a lot of the car apart, and I'm going to put a little screen here and some electronics down there to detect what gear I'm in. The cable here has all the power and ground that I'll need, switched power and ground, and that'll essentially power a Raspberry Pi with a screen, which will eventually also power the electronics down there. All right, so I'm starting to 3D model the potentiometer so I can put it around the mount. Okay, so now I have the gear lever mocked up. I roughly know in real life how far it goes left and right and how far it goes up and down. So I can use that to bring these potentiometers as close as possible so that they don't hit the lever. Okay, so here's an idea. Essentially, it's going to have like these, I don't know, like, I don't know what to call them, but they these rotate with the shifter in whichever direction. So like, here's an example. If I were to rotate the shifter, this is how it would go. And then in this axis, if I were to rotate the shifter like here, then it would be like this. Yeah, so they would always constantly kind of follow the shifter. That's the idea. Okay, so here's what I came up with. The potentiometers are mounted with the nut here through the hole, and then these individual arms have mounting on the other side as well, so they're supported on both sides. The shape is due to the fact that they shouldn't hit each other. So one's really small and one's kind of bigger. Yeah, I really hope everything fits. I think I did a good job measuring, so I hope everything will fit. But I'm not going to 3D print it just yet. I think I'm going to try designing a different, maybe easier to print, easier to build version of this. But this is a good start. Not bad. Check it out. So here's the bezel for the display. This is basically going to friction fit into the radio hole in the center console. That's the display, of course. And it's got these ribbed edges so it stays put. Hopefully it works. So the base is printing now. 12 volts goes into this little BEC, and that just turns the 12 volts into usable 5 volts for the Raspberry Pi, which is in this super sick case. There's actually a fan in there to cool it. And then a bunch of these wires are going to be extended out into the display. The display's also got its own cooling fan. So yeah, it should be pretty simple. It'll sit something like this when it's in the car. All right, so here's the base, the first print. I actually fitted it in there already, and it fit perfectly. So now I'm going to print the rest of it and see if my concept works out. This is pretty cool. Looks like the arms are made. They look a little thin, so I'm a bit worried about if they're going to hold up, but there's not much pressure that they're going to be under, so we'll find out. I managed to make a little animation. So this is basically how it's going to work. As you can see, as it moves, all these arms move, thereby rotating the potentiometers. Yup. There goes the rest of the parts. That should be pretty much everything for the bottom portion. All right, right, so actually I ended up simplifying the design a little bit. So these arms are all one piece instead of me trying to glue them. That was a bad idea. And the base is also all one piece with these little guys built into it. So I'm going to do a really long print, a couple hour long print. These are the only 3 parts to the entire assembly. So this should be awesome. Raspberry Pi all wired up. I've built this giant ribbon cable to interface with the display. So for right now, the battery is powering this. Obviously, this will instead be the car that's powering this. But for now, to do the software updates and build the software, I have to, use a power source. So yeah, this is gonna get fun. I'm gonna be moving on to the software portion pretty soon. And I think the other arm just finished printing, so I'm going to go ahead and put that on. And as you can see, the potentiometer moves with the arm. This is the top arm, the bottom arm is about to go on. Then I have to run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wires to this guy and let the software interpret the values from these to determine where the lever is. That's how it's going to work. So yeah. So it looks like the arms are a little flexible, so I'm gonna put some bracing in between and make them thicker. So this way they won't morph over time and induce a bunch of play. So now I'm wiring up the potentiometers. Middle signal, left is ground, and the red is power, of course. And then another one for here. I'll end up combining the power and the ground since they're the same for both. But the signal obviously is different. This one's x-axis, this one's y-axis. So, yep. All right, so I've got both axes showing up. And it's only got a delay of 10 milliseconds, so about 100 times a second that I'm pulling data, which I think is fine. And I'm using an Arduino Nano to get that data. This will be communicating to the Raspberry Pi via serial port, which is the USB port. And somebody made a nice little case for it, so I think I'm going to print that out and put it in the car. So the first iteration of the faceplate, I'd say, or the screen bezel or whatever, is okay. There's a little bit of gap, but I think I'll print a different version with a bit wider frame so that it fits better, but the screen looks great. All right, so after long last, I finally have the X and Y values from here on the screen of the Raspberry Pi. You can see the first values at 300. Now it's going to go up to 600. And then the second value goes from the 200s to the 400s as I move this back and forth. So now I'm just going to make a custom program that's going to take these values and determine the gear from them. Okay, so I perfected the design a little bit, and I'm on my third print of this bezel because measuring it has been kind of tough. So I'm just like guessing the size every time. I printed another one and this one was way too big. So now I lowered the size a little bit. And these are magnet holders. So I've got these neodymium magnets. They're spaced far apart because they want to run into each other. But essentially, the magnets are going to sit in there. This is going to get glued to the back of here. And this piece, this is going to get glued to the little thing, the other like AC control unit that is going to be below this guy. So this will be sticky taped on there with some pretty sticky tape. And this will be probably super glued onto the back of this guy. And those magnets are really strong. So there's actually about 1 millimeter of space between them each. So 2 millimeters of space. But that they're still going to pull really hard. So I hope it doesn't pull too hard. And yeah, it's currently 3D printing like this. Let's hope this is the right size. All right, check it out. It's coming together. I've got magnets on this thing and magnets on there. And there's about a 1 millimeter gap between these super strong rare earth magnets. So there's about 2 millimeters of total gap between the magnets, and that's the only way to not have this be permanently stuck. So this is how it goes in. It's kind of a bit tricky, but once I get it, there it is. Boom. It's in there. It's not coming out. Not with any acceleration forces or anything like that. It's super strong. The only way to get it off is to get my hand in there or like stick a tool in there and like really yank it out. Gotta love magnets. All right, so I've got everything hooked up. It's basically mocked up before I put it in the car. So this is hooked up to the Arduino is hooked up to the Raspberry Pi, and the Raspberry Pi has the display connected and also is connected to power. So once this boots up, it should go into calibration. Yep, so now it's in calibration mode, and just for fun, I'll calibrate like 2 and 3 so you can see that it's working. Okay, so 2, let's go up. 3, let's go down. Okay, and 4, 5, whatever, we'll just ignore those for now. Then there's a little sensitivity. You can touch it and move it. Okay, so now if I go this way, it should be 2. And if I go this way, it should be 3. Yep. So this is basically how the calibration will work. The middle is obviously like all the gears that aren't 2 and 4 that I didn't calibrate. So yeah, as you see, if I go here, 2, if I go back here, 3. So yeah, now this is ready for the car. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the car. Okay, so the Raspberry Pi is being mocked up. I've got some Velcro to put on there so that it doesn't move. But that's essentially where it's going to sit. It's connected to this USB cable that gets routed down. This will connect to the Arduino. And so, yeah. And then the red and the black are going to go into the switched power and ground right there. Then the display is going to go here. Faceplate's going to go on. And then I have to double tape, stick on the thingy I made, the actual piece of hardware, plug in the Arduino, turn the key, and then it should be good. Got it mounted with sticky tape. I've got the Arduino mounted right there with the USB cable plugged in. The USB cable, of course, goes all the way up and plugs into the back of the Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi is connected. Next step is to connect the screen, put the bezel in, put all these pieces back in. Well, before I do that, I'm going to make sure it works. So here we go. It's getting close. It's getting close. Check it out. It's hard to get into gear without the car running, but you get the point. And reverse. So that's reverse right there. And then that's 1. So I'm kind of worried about reverse and 1 being so close, but we shall see. Everything hooked up. Even the bezel's put in. All this stuff isn't put in yet because I'm still testing, but here we go. I'm going to turn the car into radio mode. You can see the display turned on. Now, the only unfortunate thing is you have to wait for it to boot. It takes like maybe 20 to 30 seconds. I also have to remake this bezel. It's kind of ugly, but for now it works. Here we go. It's booting. And my program should start up. Yep. Okay, so as you see, I'm in neutral. So here's my program. And I already calibrated it. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, and reverse. Woo! Beautiful. God, fourth really doesn't want to go in when the car's not running, but you get the point. Wow, this is awesome. Okay, so I've got the shift boot on, and I've recalibrated it. So now check it out. Yes. Oh, beauty. Final demo of it working with everything put back together. So, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I'm out on my first drive. As you can see, I'm in second gear. Third. Fourth. Fifth. It's working. I'm gonna do a pretty long drive and see if it's still working afterwards, but I see no reason it shouldn't be.